The rain came down in sheets, as Graham Pierce struggled to keep his grip on the paper grocery bags that threatened to disintegrate in his arms, wondering how he had gone from a promising engineer to a man who couldn't even afford reusable shopping bags. His 6-year-old daughter, Lily, was waiting at home with the babysitter, probably watching the clock and asking when Daddy would be back. And here he was at the parking lot of Save More Grocery store, watching his meager purchases get soaked because his car had decided to break down 3 blocks away, and he'd walked here in what had started as a light drizzle. "Excuse me," a voice called out from behind him, refined and clear even through the drumming rain. "Do you need help?" Graham turned to see a woman in an elegant cream coat standing under a large black umbrella, her dark hair pulled back in a sleek ponytail. She looked out of place in this neighborhood, like someone who had taken a wrong turn from wherever wealthy people shopped. He noticed her eyes were a striking green, and they held genuine concern as she looked at his soggy bags. "I'm fine, thank you," he said automatically, pride making him refuse even as another bag began to tear at the bottom. "You're clearly not fine," she said matter-of-factly, stepping closer. "Where's your car?" "3 blocks that way," Graham admitted, nodding in the direction. "Broke down." "I'll manage." The woman looked at him for a long moment, rain pattering on her umbrella. "I have a better idea. My car is right there. Let me drive you home, or at least to your car." Graham hesitated. He'd taught Lily never to get in cars with strangers, and here he was about to do exactly that. But the bag with the eggs was definitely going to give out any second, and those eggs represented a week's worth of breakfast protein for his daughter. "I appreciate it, really, but I couldn't impose," he said. "It's not an imposition," the woman replied. "I'm offering." And those bags are about 5 seconds from disaster. As if on cue, the bottom of one bag gave way, and Graham watched in horror as cans began tumbling toward the wet pavement. The woman moved quickly, holding her umbrella over both of them as she caught 2 cans with impressive reflexes. Graham managed to save the rest, but now he was juggling loose groceries with no bag to put them in. "Okay," he relented. "Thank you, really, I'm Graham." "Whitney," she said, a small smile crossing her face. "Whitney Anderson, come on before you lose anything else." Her car was indeed right there. A sleek silver Mercedes that probably cost more than Graham had earned in the past 2 years. Whitney opened the trunk, which was immaculate and empty except for an emergency kit, and helped him transfer his groceries into reusable bags she pulled from a side compartment. "You keep spare bags in your trunk?" Graham asked, impressed despite himself. "Force of habit," Whitney said. "Get in before you catch pneumonia." The interior of the car smelled like leather and something floral, expensive and clean. Graham felt acutely aware of his worn jeans and faded jacket, the way his work boots were tracking water onto the floor mat despite his efforts to keep still. "I'm sorry about the mess," he said as Whitney started the engine. "It's water. It dries." She glanced at him as she pulled out of the parking spot. 3 blocks, you said?" "Yeah, the old Ford on Maple Street. Blue, can't miss it because it's the rustiest thing on the block." Whitney smiled at that, a genuine expression that softened her refined features. "I had a car like that once, believe it or not. Drove it through college, named it Beast because it made this horrible groaning sound whenever I turned left." Graham found himself relaxing slightly. "Lily, my daughter, she calls mine Bluebell because she said it needed a pretty name to feel better about being old." "How old is Lily?" Whitney asked, navigating the rain-slicked streets with easy confidence. 6, just started 1st grade. Pride crept into Graham's voice despite everything. "She's smart as a whip, reads at a 3rd grade level already. You must be proud." "I am. She's everything." Graham looked out the window, watching the familiar shabby buildings of his neighborhood pass by. "Her mom passed away 2 years ago, cancer, so it's just us now." He wasn't sure why he'd shared that. Maybe it was the intimacy of the car, the sound of rain on the roof, or the fact that Whitney was a complete stranger he'd never see again. Sometimes, It was easier to tell truths to people who didn't matter. "I'm sorry," Whitney said quietly, and she sounded like she meant it. "That must be incredibly hard. We manage." Graham pointed ahead. "That's my car there." Whitney pulled up behind the Ford, which looked even more pathetic next to her Mercedes. She put the car in park but didn't make any move to rush him out. "Thank you," Graham said, meaning it deeply. "Really, you saved me tonight. These groceries, they're important." "I know it probably seems like nothing to you, but Lily's been looking forward to spaghetti night all week, and if I'd lost the sauce and the pasta." He trailed off, embarrassed by how much he'd revealed. "It doesn't seem like nothing," Whitney said firmly. "Food matters." "Keeping promises to your daughter matters. I'm glad I could help." Graham gathered the reusable bags, careful not to forget a single item. As he was about to get out, Whitney reached into her purse. "Wait, here's my card. If you ever need anything, or if you just want to return the bags, you can reach me at this number." Graham took the card, reading it in the dim light. Whitney Anderson, CEO, Anderson Holdings. He blinked. A CEO, he'd been helped home by an actual CEO. "I'll get these bags back to you," he promised. "Clean and everything." "No rush," Whitney said. "Drive safe when you get that car started." Graham ran through the rain to his Ford, the bags protected by Whitney's loan. He managed to get everything inside before he was completely soaked, then waved to her through the window. She waved back before driving away, her taillights disappearing into the rainy night. It took 15 minutes and a lot of coaxing, but Bluebell finally started. Graham drove home carefully, his mind replaying the encounter. Whitney Anderson had kind eyes, he thought, and she'd helped him without making him feel small, which was rarer than it should be. Lily met him at the door of their small apartment, her blonde curls bouncing as she jumped up and down. "Daddy, you're so wet. Did you swim home?" "Almost," Graham said, laughing as he set the bags down and scooped her into a hug, not caring that he was getting her damp. "How was Mrs. Chen?" "She taught me how to count to 10 in Chinese," Lily announced proudly. "Want to hear?" "Absolutely. But first, let's make that spaghetti I promised you." As Lily counted in Mandarin, stumbling adorably over the pronunciation, Graham unpacked the groceries, his mind drifting back to Whitney Anderson. He should return the bags soon, he thought. It was only polite. 3 days passed before Graham found the time to clean Whitney's bags and figure out how to return them. The business card she'd given him listed an address downtown, in one of those glass tower buildings that seemed to touch the sky. He couldn't just show up there with grocery bags, could he? Instead, he called the number on the card during his lunch break, standing outside the warehouse where he'd picked up a temporary inventory job. The phone rang 3 times before someone answered. "Anderson Holdings, how may I direct your call?" I'm trying to reach Whitney Anderson." "My name is Graham Pierce. She helped me out a few days ago, and I have something of hers to return." "One moment, please." Graham expected to be transferred to an assistant or told to mail the bags or something equally impersonal. Instead, after a brief hold, Whitney's voice came on the line. "Graham, is everything all right?" "Yeah, fine. I just wanted to return your bags, the reusable ones. I cleaned them and everything." There was a pause, then Whitney said, "You called to tell me you cleaned my grocery bags." Put like that, it sounded ridiculous. "I borrowed them." Wanted to return them. Seemed like the right thing to do. "That's very thoughtful." Whitney sounded amused. "Tell you what, I'm actually heading to a community center in your area tomorrow afternoon. We're finalizing a grant for their after-school program. Could you meet me there?" "Say 4 o'clock. It's the Riverside Community Center on Oak Street." "I know it. Lily goes to their reading program sometimes." Graham hesitated. "You sure? I could just drop them off at your office or something." 4 o'clock works better, Whitney said. "I'll see you then, Graham." She hung up before he could overthink it further. Graham pocketed his phone, wondering why a CEO would want to meet him personally over grocery bags. Maybe she was just being nice. Rich people had the luxury of being nice in inconvenient ways. The next day, Graham left his job site early. picked up Lily from school, and headed to the community center with the clean bags folded neatly in a backpack. Lily chattered about her day, about how her friend Emma had brought cookies for everyone's birthday, and how they'd learned about butterflies in science. "Why are we going to the center today?" Lily asked as they walked. "It's not reading day." "I have to return something to someone," Graham explained. "It'll be quick." The community center was a squat brick building that had seen better days, but inside it was clean and bright with children's artwork covering the walls. Graham spotted Whitney immediately. She stood near the main office, talking to an older woman he recognized as Mrs. Patterson, the center director. Whitney wore a navy blue dress and practical flats, her hair down around her shoulders today. She looked up as they entered, and her face brightened when she saw them. "Graham," she said warmly, excusing herself from Mrs. Patterson, "you must be Lily." Lily, usually shy with strangers, studied Whitney with open curiosity. "You're pretty." "Thank you," Whitney said seriously, crouching down to Lily's level. "I like your butterfly clips." "Daddy got them for me because we learned about butterflies today in school." Lily launched into an explanation of metamorphosis that was surprisingly detailed for a first grader. Whitney listened with genuine interest, asking questions that showed she was actually paying attention. Graham watched this interaction, something warm settling in his chest. Most people talked at Lily or over her. Whitney talked with her. "Here are your bags," Graham said when Lily finally paused for breath. "Thanks again for the help." "You're welcome." Whitney took the backpack but didn't move to leave. "Mrs. Patterson was just telling me that they're short on volunteers for the reading program. Would you two have time for a quick tour? I'd love to see what our grant is supporting." It seemed rude to refuse, so Graham agreed. Mrs. Patterson took them through the center, showing off the reading room where Lily's eyes lit up at the shelves of books, the art studio with its paint-splattered tables, and the computer lab with outdated but functional machines. "We serve about 200 kids a week," Mrs. Patterson explained. "Many from single-parent homes where the parents work multiple jobs. We provide a safe place, help with homework, meals when we can. Your grant, Miss Anderson, it's going to let us hire 2 more teachers and update our science materials." "I'm glad we could help," Whitney said. She glanced at Graham. "Do you bring Lily here often?" "When I can," Graham admitted. "The reading program has been great for her, and it's safe, which matters when I'm working late shifts." "Daddy works really hard," Lily piped up, slipping her hand into Graham's. "Sometimes he has 2 jobs in one day." Graham felt his face heat with embarrassment, but Whitney's expression held no pity, only respect. "That is hard work," she told Lily. "Your dad must love you very much." "He does," Lily said confidently. "He's the best daddy ever." The tour concluded, and Graham prepared to leave, but Whitney surprised him by walking out with them. "Do you two have plans for dinner?" she asked. Graham blinked. "We were just going to head home." "Why?" "There's a good pizza place around the corner." "My treat, as a thank you for returning the bags and for the tour. I don't get to see community programs in action very often." "You don't have to do that," Graham said automatically. "I want to," Whitney said simply. "Besides, Lily was just telling me about her butterfly project, and I want to hear more. Please?" Graham looked down at his daughter, who was nodding enthusiastically. Pizza was a rare treat, and he could see the hope in Lily's eyes. "Okay," he relented. "But next time it's my treat." "Deal," Whitney said, and they headed to Mario's Pizzeria. The restaurant was cheerful and casual, with red checkered tablecloths and the smell of baking dough filling the air. They settled into a booth, Lily between Graham and Whitney, and ordered a large pizza with half pepperoni for Lily and half vegetable for the adults. "So tell me more about this butterfly project," Whitney said, giving Lily her full attention. Lily needed no more encouragement. She explained with grand hand gestures how caterpillars formed chrysalises and emerged as butterflies, how they needed milkweed to survive, and how she wanted to plant a butterfly garden when they had a yard someday. "That's a wonderful idea," Whitney said. "I have a garden at my house." Maybe you could come see it sometime, get some ideas for your future garden. Lily's eyes went wide. Really? You have a garden? Do butterflies come? Lots of them, especially in summer. I have lavender and coneflowers and black-eyed Susans. The monarchs love it. Graham watched this exchange, his heart doing something complicated in his chest. Whitney didn't have to be this kind. This engaged with a 6-year-old's enthusiastic rambling, but she seemed to genuinely enjoy it. That's very kind of you to offer, Graham said carefully. But I'm sure you're busy. I am, Whitney agreed, but I make time for things that matter, and gardens should be shared. The pizza arrived, and Lily dug in with the single-minded focus of a hungry child. Graham and Whitney ate more slowly, and the conversation drifted to easier topics. The best pizza toppings, whether winter or summer was better, the challenges of the city versus the appeal of the country. What did you do before the temporary jobs? Whitney asked at one point, genuinely curious. I was an engineer, Graham said, the words still painful even after 2 years. Civil engineering. I worked for a firm that designed bridges and infrastructure. It was good work, stable. But when my wife got sick, I had to take time off to care for her. By the time. He glanced at Lily, who was focused on her pizza. By the time things settled, my position had been filled, and gaps in your resume in that field, they make people nervous. Been picking up work where I can since then. That must be frustrating, Whitney said. You have skills and experience, but circumstances beyond your control derailed your career. That's life, Graham said with a shrug he didn't quite feel. You deal with what comes. Daddy's going to get a good job again soon, Lily said suddenly, looking up from her pizza with sauce on her chin. He promised. Graham's throat tightened. That's right, sweetheart, I promised. Whitney pulled out her phone, typed something quickly, then looked at Graham. Would you be opposed to me making some calls? I know people in engineering firms around the city. No guarantees, but I could at least get your resume looked at. Pride warred with practicality in Graham's chest. I don't want charity. It's not charity, Whitney said firmly. It's networking. You have the qualifications, you just need the door opened. Let me open the door. What you do with the opportunity is up to you. Graham looked at his daughter, at her hopeful eyes and tomato sauce smile. He thought about their cramped apartment, about juggling shifts and scraping by, about the dreams he'd put on hold. Okay, he said quietly. Thank you. They finished dinner with lighter conversation, and when the check came, Whitney paid before Graham could even reach for his wallet. Outside the restaurant, the evening had turned cool and clear, the earlier week's rain just a memory. Thank you for dinner, Graham said as they prepared to part ways, and for, well, everything. It was my pleasure, Whitney said. She crouched down to Lily's level again. It was lovely meeting you, Lily. Keep up with those butterfly studies. Can we really come see your garden? Lily asked, her natural shyness overcome by excitement. Whitney glanced up at Graham, a question in her eyes. He found himself nodding. Yeah, we'd like that, he said. How about Saturday? Whitney suggested. I'll text you the address, Graham, say 10 in the morning. We could have lunch afterward if Lily's interested. Lunch too. Lily's eyes couldn't get any wider. Daddy, can we? We can, Graham said, unable to deny her this joy. Saturday at 10. They exchanged phone numbers, and then Whitney headed to her car while Graham and Lily walked to their bus stop. Lily chattered the entire ride home about butterflies and gardens and how nice Miss Whitney was. That night, after Lily was asleep, Graham sat on their worn couch and looked at Whitney's contact information in his phone. He should probably be suspicious of her motives or worried that this was some kind of pity project. But when he thought about the way she'd looked at him, at Lily, all he felt was a cautious, fragile hope. His phone buzzed. A message from Whitney. Had a lovely time tonight. Lily is wonderful and you're clearly doing an amazing job with her. See you Saturday. Here's my address. Graham looked at the address she'd sent and nearly dropped his phone. He recognized the street name. It was in Ashland Heights, where the houses started at $2 million and went up from there, he typed back. "Thanks for tonight. We're looking forward to Saturday." Her response came quickly. "Me too." Graham set his phone down and leaned back, staring at the water-stained ceiling of his apartment. A CEO had just invited him and his daughter to her house for a garden tour and lunch. This was his life now, apparently. Strange and unexpected, but maybe, just maybe, the start of something good. Saturday arrived bright and clear, the kind of autumn day that made everything seem possible. Graham dressed Lily in her best outfit, a purple dress with leggings that wasn't too stained or worn, and wrestled his own hair into submission with more care than usual. He'd borrowed his buddy Marcus's car for the day, not wanting to risk Bluebell breaking down on the way to Ashland Heights. "Is Miss Whitney a princess?" Lily asked from the backseat as they drove through increasingly affluent neighborhoods. "No, baby, she's just a successful businesswoman. But she's so pretty and nice, like a princess in stories, and she has a garden. Princesses always have gardens." Graham smiled at his daughter's logic. "I guess you could say she's like a princess, then." Whitney's house was not what Graham expected. Yes, it was in Ashland Heights, and yes, it was clearly expensive, but it wasn't ostentatious. A 2-story craftsman-style home in warm gray with white trim, it had the kind of understated elegance that spoke of taste rather than showiness. The front yard was indeed filled with gardens, though most of the flowers were past their prime now in late October. Whitney met them at the door wearing jeans and a soft green sweater that made her eyes even more striking. Her hair was in a casual braid, and she looked more relaxed than Graham had seen her. "You found it," she said warmly. Come in, come in." The interior was just as tasteful as the exterior. Hardwood floors, comfortable furniture in earth tones, and photographs on the walls of landscapes and gardens rather than the stark modern art Graham had half expected. It felt like a home, not a showpiece. "Your house is beautiful," Graham said honestly. "Thank you." "I've worked hard to make it feel like mine." Whitney turned to Lily. "Ready to see the garden?" "Yes, please." They went through the house to the backyard, and Lily gasped. The garden was extensive, even in its autumn state. Pathways wound between beds of plants, some still blooming, others displaying interesting seed heads and foliage. A small pond with a fountain provided the sound of running water, and several bird feeders hung from strategically placed poles. "In the summer, this place is alive with butterflies," Whitney explained, guiding them along the paths. "Monarchs, swallowtails, painted ladies. I've been gardening for about 5 years now. It started as a stress relief hobby and became a passion." She showed Lily the milkweed plants, now finished for the season, but which Whitney explained came back every year. She pointed out where different flowers would bloom in spring and summer, describing colors and heights with the enthusiasm of someone who truly loved what she was talking about. Graham followed, watching Whitney and Lily interact. His daughter had opened up completely, asking endless questions that Whitney answered with patience and genuine interest. At one point, Lily slipped her hand into Whitney's as they walked, and Graham saw Whitney's expression soften with surprised pleasure. "You've created something really special here," Graham said when they paused near the pond. "It's been a labor of love," Whitney admitted. "When I bought this place, the yard was just grass. Every plant you see, I put in myself. Well, me and a landscaper friend who took pity on my initial terrible attempts at garden design. I think you should be very proud." Their eyes met, and something passed between them, a moment of connection that made Graham's breath catch. "Daddy, look," Lily's voice broke the moment. She was crouched by the pond, watching goldfish dart between water plants. "There are fish." They spent another hour in the garden, and Graham found himself relaxing in a way he hadn't in years. There was something peaceful about this space, about Whitney's presence, that made the constant stress of his life fade into the background. Eventually, Whitney suggested lunch, and they moved inside to her kitchen, which was large and bright with white cabinets and butcher block counters. Whitney had prepared a simple meal of grilled chicken, roasted vegetables, and fresh bread that turned out to be homemade. You made the bread?" Graham asked, impressed. "Baking is another hobby," Whitney said, slicing the loaf. "Something about working with my hands, creating something tangible. The business world is so abstract sometimes, I need to balance it with concrete things." Over lunch, the conversation flowed easily. Lily told Whitney about school, about her friend Emma and mean Tommy who pulled hair, about the upcoming Halloween party and how she wanted to be a butterfly. "A butterfly costume sounds perfect for you," Whitney said. "Have you started making it?" Lily's face fell. "Daddy said we'd try, but store costumes cost too much and we don't have stuff to make one." Graham felt the familiar stab of inadequacy. "We'll figure something out, Lil." "I might have some fabric and supplies," Whitney said casually. "I went through a quilting phase last year and bought way too much. If you wanted, we could make a costume together. I'm not the best seamstress, but I can manage a basic costume." "Really?" Lily bounced in her seat. "We could make it together." Whitney looked at Graham, clearly seeking permission. He should probably say no, should maintain some boundary between his life and this woman who had somehow entered it. But Lily's face was so hopeful, and Whitney's offer seemed genuine. "If you're sure it's not too much trouble," he said. "I'm sure," Whitney said. "How about next Saturday?" "We could make a day of it." And so it was decided. When they left that afternoon, Lily with promises of costume making and Graham with a warm feeling in his chest he didn't want to examine too closely, Whitney walked them to their borrowed car. "Thank you for coming," she said. "I really enjoyed today." "So did we," Graham said honestly. "More than you probably know." "I think I might know," Whitney said softly, her eyes on his. The drive home was filled with Lily's chatter about the garden and Miss Whitney and how next Saturday couldn't come fast enough. Graham listened and agreed, and tried not to think about how much he was already looking forward to seeing Whitney again himself. That night, after Lily was in bed, Graham's phone rang. Whitney's name on the screen made his heart rate pick up. "Hey," he answered. "Hey," Whitney said, and he could hear the smile in her voice. "I wanted to let you know that I talked to a friend who runs a civil engineering firm, Bradley Associates. They're looking for a senior engineer, and I told him about you. He's willing to look at your resume and set up an interview if you're interested." Graham sat down heavily on the couch. Seriously. No promises, but it's a foot in the door. Can you email me your resume? I'll forward it to him." "Whitney, I don't know what to say." "Say you'll send the resume," she said pragmatically. "And Graham, I'm not doing this because I feel sorry for you. I'm doing this because you deserve a break, and because I have the connections to help. You still have to ace the interview and prove yourself. I'm just opening the door." "I'll send it tonight," Graham promised. "Thank you. You're welcome. See you Saturday." Wouldn't miss it. After they hung up, Graham dug out his resume, updated it with his recent temporary work, and spent 2 hours polishing it until it shone. He sent it to Whitney with a brief thank you note, then sat back and let himself hope. The interview came through on Tuesday. Bradley Associates wanted to meet with him on Thursday afternoon. Graham arranged to take the time off from his inventory job, bought a new tie he couldn't really afford, and spent Wednesday evening preparing answers to likely questions. Thursday arrived, and Graham put on his one good suit, now a bit tight in the shoulders, but still presentable. He kissed Lily goodbye at school, her enthusiastic, "Good luck, Daddy," ringing in his ears, and took the bus downtown. Bradley Associates occupied 3 floors of a modern office building with views of the river. The receptionist directed him to a conference room where 3 people waited, 2 men and 1 woman, all in professional attire. "Mr. Pierce, thank you for coming," the older man said, extending his hand. "I'm Robert Bradley, and these are my partners, Susan Chen and Michael Torres. Whitney Anderson spoke highly of you." The interview lasted 90 minutes. They asked about his previous work, his education, his approach to problem solving. They presented him with a hypothetical bridge design challenge and asked him to walk through his process. Graham felt his old confidence returning as he discussed load calculations and material stress factors, as he drew diagrams and explained his reasoning. When it was over, Robert Bradley smiled. "You clearly know your stuff, Mr. Pierce. We appreciate your time and will be in touch by early next week." Graham left the building feeling cautiously optimistic. He'd done well, he knew that much. Whether it was enough remained to be seen. He texted Whitney. "Interview went well. Thank you again for the connection." Her response came quickly. "I knew you'd do great. Fingers crossed." Saturday brought costume-making day. Graham and Lily arrived at Whitney's house mid-morning to find she'd cleared her dining room table and laid out an impressive array of fabric, ribbons, wire, and craft supplies. "I may have gone a little overboard," Whitney admitted, looking at the spread. "But I figured better too much than too little." Lily was in heaven, touching fabrics and holding ribbons up to the light. Together, the three of them sketched out a design for the butterfly costume. A dress made of layers of colorful fabric to represent wings, with wire-framed wings that would attach to the back and antennae on a headband. Graham discovered that Whitney had been modest about her sewing skills. She was actually quite good, guiding the project with steady hands and creative problem-solving when things didn't go as planned. Graham helped where he could, holding pieces in place and cutting fabric, while Lily supplied endless enthusiasm and opinions on color choices. They worked through lunch, eating sandwiches at the table between sewing sessions. The afternoon sun slanted through the windows, and music played softly from Whitney's speaker. It felt domestic and comfortable in a way that made Graham's chest ache with longing. "How did you learn to sew?" Graham asked at one point, watching Whitney stitch a seam with practiced efficiency. "My grandmother," Whitney said, her expression softening. "She raised me after my parents died when I was 8, car accident. She taught me all kinds of practical skills: sewing, cooking, gardening, budgeting. She believed in being self-sufficient." "I'm sorry about your parents," Graham said quietly. "It was a long time ago," Whitney said. "But thank you. My grandmother was wonderful. She passed away 5 years ago, left me enough money to start my business. Everything I have, I owe to her." "She'd be proud of you," Graham said. Whitney looked up from her sewing, her eyes bright. "I hope so." The moment stretched between them, loaded with unspoken things. Lily, oblivious to the undercurrents, held up the headband with antennae they'd constructed. "Look how good these turned out." By late afternoon, the costume was nearly complete. Lily tried it on, and even in its unfinished state, it was clearly going to be spectacular. The wings shimmered when she moved, and the layers of fabric created a beautiful flowing effect. "Miss Whitney, you're magic," Lily declared, twirling to watch the wings move. "We all made it together," Whitney corrected gently. "It's our magic." As they packed up, Graham found himself reluctant to leave. The day had been perfect in its simplicity, and he realized with sudden clarity that he was developing real feelings for Whitney Anderson. Not just gratitude or attraction, but something deeper, something that terrified and exhilarated him in equal measure. "Would you two like to stay for dinner?" Whitney asked, as if she'd read his mind. "Nothing fancy, just pasta." Graham looked at Lily, who nodded vigorously. "We'd love to." Dinner was indeed simple pasta with homemade sauce and salad, but it was delicious. They ate in Whitney's kitchen, Lily chattering about her costume and Halloween plans, the adults chiming in with memories of their own childhood Halloweens. After dinner, Lily started yawning, the excitement of the day catching up with her. She curled up on Whitney's couch with a throw blanket, her eyes drooping as the adults cleaned up. "She's welcome to sleep there as long as she needs," Whitney said softly, loading dishes into the dishwasher. "She had a big day," Graham said, washing the pasta pot by hand. "We should probably head home soon." "Or you could stay a bit longer," Whitney suggested. "I make excellent coffee, and we could talk without little ears listening." Graham agreed, and soon they were sitting on Whitney's back porch with steaming mugs, the garden visible in the gathering dusk. Solar lights along the paths had come on, creating a magical atmosphere. "I have to confess something," Whitney said after a moment of comfortable silence. That day in the parking lot, when I saw you struggling with those groceries, I almost didn't stop. I was tired, I was stressed about a deal that was falling apart, and I just wanted to get home. But something made me turn around. I'm glad you did, Graham said. Me too, Whitney said, turning to look at him, because I haven't been able to stop thinking about you since then. About you and Lily, and how hard you're working to give her a good life. About how kind you were despite being in a tough situation, how you still made sure to return borrowed grocery bags. Graham's heart was pounding. Whitney, I need to be honest with you. I'm not in a place where I can offer much. I'm barely keeping my head above water most days. My life is complicated and messy, and you're you, successful and accomplished and way out of my league. That's nonsense, Whitney said firmly. You're intelligent and hardworking and a devoted father. You're kind and genuine. And league. Graham, I've dated men who looked perfect on paper but were empty inside. Men who saw me as a trophy or a bank account. You see me as a person. Because you are a person. An amazing person who deserves someone who can match what you bring to the table. Whitney set down her coffee mug and reached for Graham's hand. Her fingers were warm and sure. What if I don't want someone who matches me? What if I want someone who compliments me? Someone who reminds me what's really important in life. Graham looked at their joined hands, then up at Whitney's face. In the soft light, she was breathtakingly beautiful, but it was more than that. She was real and present and looking at him like he mattered. I'm falling for you, he admitted quietly. And it scares me because I haven't felt this way since my wife, and because I have Lily to think about, and because I don't want to mess this up. I'm falling for you too, Whitney said. And yes, it's scary, but maybe it's worth being scared for. They sat there for a long moment, hands linked, the garden peaceful around them. Then Graham leaned in slowly, giving Whitney every chance to pull away, and kissed her softly. Her lips were warm and responsive, and the kiss was gentle and full of promise. When they pulled apart, Whitney was smiling. So what do we do now? We take it slow, Graham said. We see where this goes, and we make sure Lily is okay with everything because she comes first. Absolutely, Whitney agreed. She comes first. Monday morning brought the call Graham had been hoping for. Bradley Associates wanted to offer him the position. The salary they quoted was more than he'd made at his previous job, with good benefits and room for advancement. Graham accepted on the spot, his hands shaking with relief and joy. He called Whitney immediately after. I got it, the job. I start in 2 weeks. Graham, that's wonderful. Whitney's excitement was genuine and infectious. We should celebrate. Dinner this week, my treat. Actually, I think I can afford to treat you this time, Graham said, grinning despite the tears in his eyes. Nothing fancy, but I want to take you out properly. A date. A date, Whitney repeated, warmth in her voice. I'd love that. They went out on Wednesday evening, Graham's neighbor watching Lily for a few hours. Graham took Whitney to a nice but not extravagant Italian restaurant, and they talked for hours over wine and pasta. They talked about their hopes and fears, about Whitney's business and the challenges of being a woman CEO, about Graham's plans for his career now that it was back on track. I want to do more, Whitney confided. The business is successful, but I want it to mean something. That's why I started focusing on community grants. I want to give back, especially to people like you who work hard but just need a break. You're already doing amazing things, Graham said. The community center, this job connection, you've changed my life, Whitney. We changed each other's lives, Whitney corrected. You reminded me why I do what I do. You and Lily, you've brought joy back into my world. They kissed goodnight in the parking lot, a longer, deeper kiss than their first, full of promise and growing desire. When Graham got home, he felt like he was walking on air. Over the next few weeks, Graham and Whitney saw each other regularly. Sometimes it was family time with Lily, trips to the park or the zoo or movie nights at Whitney's house. Other times, it was just the two of them, stolen hours when Lily was at school or with friends, learning each other's rhythms and quirks. Graham started his new job and threw himself into it with renewed passion. His coworkers were friendly, the projects were challenging and interesting, and for the first time in 2 years, he felt like himself again. The first thing he did with his first paycheck was move into a better apartment, a 2-bedroom in a safer neighborhood with a small yard where Lily could play. Halloween came, and Lily's butterfly costume was the hit of her school party. Graham took photos of her twirling and posing, her joy evident in every picture. Whitney came to trick or treating with them, and the 3 of them made quite a picture. Lily in her elaborate costume, Graham dressed as a zookeeper, and Whitney who'd thrown together a quick beekeeper outfit to match the theme. "We look like a family," Lily observed as they walked from house to house. Graham and Whitney exchanged glances. They hadn't talked about what they were yet, hadn't put labels on this thing growing between them, but Lily was right. They did look like a family, and more importantly, they felt like one. November brought Thanksgiving, and Whitney invited Graham and Lily to her house for dinner. "I usually spend it alone," she admitted. "I'd love to have company this year." Graham brought wine and helped Whitney cook, while Lily made place cards and a centerpiece from construction paper and leaves from the yard. The day was relaxed and full of laughter, and when they sat down to eat, holding hands while Whitney said a simple grace, Graham felt his heart overflow with gratitude for the unexpected turns his life had taken. "I'm thankful for Miss Whitney," Lily said, when it was her turn to share. "And for Daddy's new job, and for our new apartment, and for butterflies." "I'm thankful for this moment," Whitney said, her eyes on Graham, "for new friends who became so much more." "I'm thankful for second chances," Graham said quietly, "and for kind strangers in parking lots who stopped to help." After dinner, while Lily was occupied with a movie, Graham and Whitney sat together on the couch, her head on his shoulder. "I love you," Graham said, the words slipping out naturally. "I probably should wait longer to say it, should be more careful, but it's true. I love you, Whitney." Whitney lifted her head to look at him, her eyes shining. "I love you too, I have for weeks now." They kissed, and it felt like sealing a promise. Everything was moving fast, maybe too fast by conventional standards, but it also felt exactly right. December arrived with the first snow, and with it, a shift in their relationship. Whitney met Graham's friends, the few he'd managed to keep through the hard years. Graham met Whitney's business associates, and was surprised to find he could hold his own in their conversations, his engineering background and natural intelligence serving him well. One evening, about a month before Christmas, Whitney brought up the topic Graham had been half dreading, half hoping for. "Lily starts winter break in 2 weeks," she said. They were at Graham's apartment, cooking dinner together while Lily did homework at the kitchen table. "I was thinking, if you two didn't have other plans, maybe you'd like to come away with me for a few days. I have a cabin in the mountains, nothing too fancy but beautiful this time of year. We could have a real winter getaway." Graham glanced at Lily, who had perked up at the word cabin. "What do you think, Lil? Want to go to the mountains with Whitney? Would there be snow? Could we build a snowman?" Lily asked eagerly. "Definitely snow and definitely snowmen," Whitney promised. "And hot chocolate and board games and everything cozy." "Yes, yes, yes," Lily bounced in her chair. "Then I guess we're going to the mountains," Graham said, smiling at Whitney's obvious pleasure. The cabin turned out to be Whitney's version of nothing too fancy, which meant it was actually quite luxurious. 3 bedrooms, a huge stone fireplace, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking a pristine valley, and a hot tub on the deck. They arrived on a Friday evening, snow falling softly, the world quiet and peaceful. The next few days were idyllic. They built snowmen and had snowball fights, made s'mores in the fireplace, and played endless rounds of Monopoly and Uno. Lily learned to ski on the small slope behind the cabin, Whitney proving to be a patient teacher. In the evenings, after Lily went to bed, Graham and Whitney sat by the fire, talking about everything and nothing, stealing kisses and dreaming about the future. "I want this," Whitney said one night, curled against Graham's side. "Not just the vacation, but all of it. I want to be part of your lives, both of you. I want to be there for school plays and sick days and ordinary Tuesday nights." "I want that too," Graham said. "But we should talk about what that means, where this is going." Whitney sat up to look at him properly. "I'll tell you where I want it to go. I want us to be together, officially. I want to be there for Lily as whatever she needs me to be. I want to build a life with you, Graham. I know it's fast, but when something is right, it's right. What about your work, your lifestyle? My life is so different from yours." "Your life is exactly what I want," Whitney said firmly. "Yes, I have money and a business, and that's not going to change. But Graham, I've been lonely. I've had success, but not happiness. You and Lily, you've brought me happiness. Real, genuine joy. I don't want to give that up because of some idea of how relationships should progress or what timelines we should follow." Graham pulled her close, kissing her forehead. "I want to build a life with you too. I love you so much, and Lily adores you, but I need to make sure she understands what's happening, that this is good for her." "Of course," Whitney agreed. "We'll talk to her together, make sure she's comfortable with everything." They had that conversation the next morning. Lily sat between them on the couch, looking serious and a little nervous. "Lily, you know how much I love you, right?" Graham started. "Yes, Daddy. And you know that I loved your mommy very much, and I'll always love her because she gave me you." Lily nodded, her eyes getting a bit watery. "Well, I want you to know that I also love Whitney, in a grown-up way, and Whitney loves both of us. We want to be a family together if that's okay with you." Lily looked at Whitney, then back at Graham. "Would Whitney be my new mommy?" Whitney leaned forward, her voice gentle. "I would never try to replace your mommy, Lily. No one could do that. But I would like to be someone who loves you and takes care of you and is there for you. We can figure out what to call me together, whatever feels right to you." "Like a bonus mom," Lily suggested. "Exactly like a bonus mom," Whitney said, smiling through sudden tears. "If you want that." Lily thought for a moment, her face scrunched in concentration. Then she nodded decisively. "I want that. You make Daddy happy and you're nice to me and you have a garden with butterflies." "That's what mamas do." They all ended up in a group hug, crying and laughing at the same time. It was messy and emotional and absolutely perfect. The rest of the vacation passed in a glow of new understanding. They were a family now, officially in their hearts even if not yet on paper. They made plans carefully, talking about logistics and boundaries and how to blend their lives together. Christmas came, and Graham and Lily spent Christmas Eve at Whitney's house, decorating her tree and baking cookies. Christmas morning, Whitney joined them at Graham's apartment, bringing thoughtful gifts. A new bike for Lily, a professional drafting set for Graham, and for both of them, a framed photo of the three of them from their cabin trip, laughing in the snow. "I have something for you too," Graham said, pulling out a small box that made Whitney's eyes widen. "Graham, is that—" "It's a promise," he said, opening the box to reveal a delicate ring with a small diamond. "Not an engagement ring yet, because I want to do that properly when the time is right. But a promise that I'm committed to us, to our future. A promise that you're it for me, Whitney Anderson." Whitney's hands shook as she slipped the ring on her right hand. "I love it. I love you, both of you, so much. I got you something too," Lily said, producing a wrapped package that turned out to be a drawing she'd made. The three of them in Whitney's garden, surrounded by butterflies. "It's us being a family." Whitney hung the drawing in her home office the next day, right where she could see it while she worked. The new year brought changes and challenges. Whitney sold her house, and they went house hunting together, looking for a place that would be theirs, not his or hers, but theirs. They found a beautiful craftsman-style home with a big yard perfect for gardening, close to Lily's school and Graham's office. Moving in together was an adjustment. There were disagreements about decorating and household chores, about schedules and boundaries. But they worked through each issue with patience and communication, both committed to making their blended life work. Graham proposed properly in the spring, during a picnic in their new garden where Whitney had planted a special butterfly section. He got down on one knee while Lily stood nearby with a sign that read, "Will you be our forever family?" Whitney said yes through happy tears, and the ring Graham presented this time was perfect. A sapphire surrounded by small diamonds, unique and beautiful like her. The wedding was in September, exactly 1 year after that rainy night in the parking lot. They kept it small and intimate, just close friends and family in Whitney's grandmother's garden that had been preserved at the old family estate. Lily was the flower girl, wearing a dress with butterfly embroidery that Whitney had commissioned specially. When Graham and Whitney exchanged vows, they included promises not just to each other but to Lily, committing to love and support her as a team. There wasn't a dry eye in the garden. The reception was joyful and full of dancing. At one point, Graham pulled Whitney close and said, "Remember when you stopped to help a stranger in a parking lot?" "Best decision I ever made," Whitney said. "Second best," Graham corrected. "The best was saying yes when I asked you to be ours forever." Life settled into a beautiful rhythm. Graham thrived at work, eventually being promoted to lead engineer on a major bridge project. Whitney's business continued to grow, but she made sure to maintain balance, to be present for school events and family dinners. Lily bloomed with 2 parents who loved her. She excelled in school, made friends easily, and never doubted for a moment that she was cherished. She called Whitney Mama W, a name she'd come up with herself, and often told people proudly that she had the best bonus mom ever. 2 years after the wedding, Whitney and Graham welcomed a son they named Daniel. Lily was over the moon to be a big sister, taking her role seriously and helping with bottles and diaper changes with enthusiasm. 3 years after Daniel came a daughter, Emma, completing their family. The house was full of noise and love and the beautiful chaos of daily life. Whitney cut back on her work hours to be more present, and Graham arranged his schedule to coach Lily's soccer team. They had challenges, of course. Financial stress occasionally still appeared, though nothing like Graham's struggling days. There were disagreements and hard conversations and moments of doubt. But they faced everything together, their foundation of respect and love keeping them strong. On the 10th anniversary of that rainy parking lot encounter, Graham and Whitney went back to that Save More grocery store. It looked exactly the same, worn and shabby and serving its neighborhood faithfully. "You know what I think about sometimes?" Whitney said, holding Graham's hand as they stood in the parking lot. "What if I hadn't stopped that day? What if I'd just driven past?" "But you didn't," Graham said. "You stopped. You saw someone who needed help and you helped, and that one act of kindness changed both our lives." "No," Whitney corrected softly. "Your kindness changed my life. You were the one struggling but still insisted on returning borrowed grocery bags. You were the one who showed me what really matters." They kissed there in the parking lot, not caring who saw, grateful for rain and broken cars and the courage to stop for a stranger. That evening, they gathered their family for dinner in their garden, now mature and beautiful, full of the butterflies Lily had dreamed about years ago. Daniel chased his sisters through the flowers while Whitney and Graham watched from the porch, the chaos of their life spread out before them in all its imperfect perfection. "Happy?" Graham asked, pulling Whitney close. "Deliriously," she said. "You." "More than I ever thought possible," he admitted. "I went from struggling to keep my head above water to this, a life I couldn't have imagined in my wildest dreams." "We built this together," Whitney reminded him. "Every bit of it." Lily ran up then, breathless and laughing, her siblings behind her. "Mama W, Daddy, Daniel says butterflies aren't magic, but I know they are. Tell him." "Everything is magic if you believe in it," Whitney said wisely. "Butterflies, gardens, and kind strangers who become family." "Exactly," Graham agreed, gathering his children close while keeping one arm around his wife. "That's the best kind of magic there is." As the sun set over their garden, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, the family stayed there together, talking and laughing and making plans for tomorrow. It was an ordinary evening in an extraordinary life, built on a foundation of one small act of kindness that had rippled out into something beautiful and lasting. The butterflies danced in the fading light, and if you believed in magic, maybe they were celebrating too. Celebrating love and second chances, celebrating the courage to stop and help, celebrating the beautiful truth that sometimes the smallest gestures can change everything. Years later, when people asked Whitney and Graham about their love story, they would smile at each other and say it started with groceries in the rain. But really, it started with something deeper: the willingness to see each other as humans worthy of kindness, respect, and eventually, love. And that, they would tell anyone who listened, was the real magic. Not the happy ending, though they had that too, but the choice to be kind when it wasn't convenient, to help when it cost something, to open your heart even when it was scary. The butterflies in their garden would agree if butterflies could talk. But they didn't need to. Their presence was enough, a living reminder of transformation and beauty and the magic that happens when people choose love. The Pierce Anderson family lived happily ever after, but not in the fairy tale way where everything was perfect. They lived happily in the real way, with challenges met together, with laughter through tears, with ordinary days made extraordinary by love. And it all started because a struggling father carried groceries for a stranger, and a millionaire woman remembered his kindness. Sometimes, that's all it takes. One moment of connection, one choice to care, one rainy evening when paths cross and lives change forever. That's the kind of magic that's real, the kind that lasts, the kind that builds families and transforms lives. And the Pierce Anderson family, standing together in their butterfly garden as evening fell, was living proof that magic like that exists in the world. All you have to do is be brave enough to stop, to help, to open your heart to the possibilities. The rest, as they say, is history. Or in this case, it's love, which might just be the best kind of history there is.